Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Espinosa. I'm joined here with my colleague Brenda Slaughter Reynolds. We both work in the Grants Administration Division in the City of Los Angeles's Department of Cultural Affairs. Thank you for taking the time to join us today in this afternoon's webinar on LA City's Cultural Grant Program. Over the next hour and a half or so, we're going to talk in detail about what this grant program is about, what we fund, who we fund, and provide an overview of what the application process looks like. You can expect the webinar to be organized around two main parts. Brenda is going to kick off the webinar with a discussion about the Cultural Grant Program eligibility requirements, program details and expectations, and that will take approximately about a half hour. Then we're going to shift gears and do a deep dive on what the application process looks like, using the platform that we will be using to submit applications. That will probably take approximately 1 hour. Neither Brenda nor I can hear you, but we do invite you to send us questions along the way using GoToWebinar's question and answer or commenting tool. In GoToWebinar's little window there should be an orange button that has I think it's like a window, like a chat window icon. If you click on that, you'll have the opportunity to send us questions. Our goal is to field these questions along the way, and we'll pause at opportune times to address them. Without further ado, I hope you can hear us okay. If you can't, please do send us a quick note now. We had some technical difficulties the first time we did this, and we want to avoid it this time around. If we're not seeing any issues with audio and tech issues, we're going to go ahead and kick off the webinar. I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Brenda to talk to you about the Cultural Grant Program.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here today. As I go through, please feel free to submit your questions into the chat. I'd first like to begin by giving you a quick overview of the Department of Cultural Affairs and the Grants Division. Formed in 1925, the Department of Cultural Affairs promotes arts and culture as a way to ignite a powerful dialogue, engage LA's residents and visitors, and ensure LA's varied cultures are recognized, acknowledged, and experienced. DCA advances the social, economic impact of the arts and culture through grant making, public art, community arts, and strategic marketing and development. DCA grants approximately $3.3 million annually to approximately 300 artists and nonprofit organizations. The department also provides arts and cultural programming in its numerous neighborhood art centers and theaters, and creates several arts and education programs for young people. In addition, the DCA Grants Division is committed to providing arts and culture as a public service, ensuring that all Angelinos have access to programming in their neighborhoods and communities. This grants program creates valuable arts partnerships in all neighborhoods. Our website address is Culture LA. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Now that you know some things about the Department of Cultural Affairs, let's talk about seeing if your organization is eligible to apply to the Cultural Grants Program. Some eligibility guidelines. Must be a nonprofit 501c3 organization with a primary purpose to provide arts and cultural services. Must be a charitable organization, such as a 501c6, that will partner with one or more arts partners to present an outdoor festival or parade. The organization must be headquartered in Los Angeles County with an address other than a post office box. Must be a nonprofit 501c3 arts organization and may only submit one traditional application and one festival or parade application, as well as applications for any and all DCA special initiatives for each year. Must have a minimum of 1 year of prior arts programming within the City of Los Angeles. This Cultural Grants Program does not fund new initiatives or seasons. This program is a project funder. So in thinking about the 1 year prior programming, your organization should think about the project that would best benefit from the Cultural Grants Program. Eligible organizations for the Cultural Grants Program may submit in the following categories. Each of these categories requires a free or low-cost culminating project. And just to let you know, more than 71% of our applications typically fall within the artistic project category. So let's go over them. Artistic project is support for the production and presentation of one or more public projects. An example of artistic project would be a gallery or a theatrical production. Next, we have outdoor festival, parade category. So this is an outdoor event that takes place at a single public site over one day or one weekend. So a note here on the outdoor festival category, non-arts nonprofits are eligible to apply in this category. Film screenings should not apply in this category. Outdoor music concert series should not apply in this category. And to be sure, please review the guidelines of the parade festival category as being open to the public within one day or one weekend. An example of this would be an art walk or a cultural festival with the street blocked off, but open to the public to attend. Next, we have arts education. And this is a series of youth arts, cultural activities, often during the school day, that culminates with at least one public event that does not take place during the school hours. An example of this would be a multi-week series of arts workshops at a school with a public culminating event or performance after school hours and open to the public. It very often does take place at school, but it is very important that the performance be open to the public. In addition, for the arts education category, you will need to submit a curriculum. Next, we have operating project. Now, support for this is for a specifically described step for the administrative advancement of a small or mid-sized arts organization headquartered within the city of Los Angeles. This application must also include your strategic plan, and the proposal should be part of the strategic plan. So an example of this would be taking a part-time marketing position and making it into a full-time marketing position. A special note for this category is that the applicant must submit the organization's strategic plan as a supplemental item for this proposal. Please also note that this category is to be used to grow the organization and is not intended to be used for multiple years of funding. Next, we have business education and arts advocacy. Applicants in this category do not themselves present artistic projects to the public, but instead they coordinate field building activities or forums. So this category is for organizations whose primary purpose it is to advocate and educate arts organizations through workshops and business trainings. So now that we have our proposal categories, let's talk about cycles. The Cultural Grant Program within each proposal category works on a 2-year cycle. This means that applicants are eligible for a possible second year of funding from this application, and panels will be convened with experts specific to that discipline for on-cycle years. So for our 2019 odd cycle application deadlines, this would be our on-cycle year. The disciplines on cycle are business education and arts advocacy. So these again are arts advocacy organizations hosting workshops on advocacy topics and business training for arts organizations. We then have visual design arts. This is for exhibitions, visual arts workshops, gallery showings of new works, public events creating dialogue about contemporary art. Next, we have literary arts. This is perhaps a themed literary event, public literary events consisting of activities such as readings of a new work, public conversations between authors, Q&A sessions with the public audience, a public literary event in conjunction with a new printed book. Next, we have media arts. Some examples would include a film festival, traditional folk art is next, and for that we have examples of cultural traditional workshops or a series of workshops in conjunction with a public culminating event or production of a cultural event. Next we have outdoor festival parade, and this is again for an outdoor event taking place over one weekend and in one place, typically has a street closure. And then we have arts education and operating in a non-performing arts emphasis. Arts education operating would be things such as a visual arts workshops, etc., using a non-performing arts emphasis. Now let's move on to our even year application deadlines. For us this year are considered off-cycle. This means that you're still eligible to apply, but the panels, the peer panels that will review these applications will be mixed experts, and that this application off-cycle will be only eligible for 1 year of funding. So that if you are a dance company applying this year, you would then need to apply the following year to become on-cycle. Some of those off-cycle categories will allow for an application this year. Please do note, though, that this is for 1 year of funding. So for the dance applications, this includes dance concerts. Music applications, this would be music concerts. Theater applications would be for plays or workshops. Multidisciplinary applications are performing arts, which incorporate multiple items for performing, which may include music, dance, and theater in one performance. Then again, we have the outdoor festival parade category with their performing arts emphasis. We also have arts education category and operating for performing arts emphasis. Just a note on all applications again, the activities should include a free and low cost event open to the public for your culminating event. And a special note here is regarding underserved arts districts. So please note that the DCA Grants Division has a geographic need to serve arts underserved in the city, especially in the San Fernando Valley. So this would include council districts 3, 6, 7, and 12. Also in South LA, we are very interested in projects taking place in council districts 8 and 9. Projects with capacity enrollment and attendance that serve their constituencies, and interested in projects that develop jobs for artists and other creative workers. So now that you know something about our priorities and what we're looking to fund, let's go over what you can ask for. First, let's determine the size of your organization. That will inform the amount of funding you're able to request. Please remember, this is a matching grant, and if you request $10,000, your project must have a $20,000 budget, and your organization needs to indicate where the matching funding is coming from. So we're asking you to realistically estimate a 1-to-1 match for the funding requested, and this is either through cash, in kind with limitations, and other grants. Here are the maximum allowable requests. For the extra large budget organizations, this is project support. This is nonprofit arts organization with a prior operating budgets consistently of 10 million or greater, and they may request up to 4% of its most recently completed fiscal year budget to a maximum of $80,000. Extra large budgets, extra large applicants should determine at least 20% of the requested DCA funds to go toward artist fees, salaries, or similar payments. And plan to provide detailed justification for projects in which more than 50% of the grant request would fund administrative costs or staff. Opportunities in this category are cycled by artistic disciplines, so new extra-large applicants should contact the grant director before applying. Large budget organization is project support. It's a nonprofit arts organization with prior operating budgets consistently greater than $800,000 and may request up to 4% of its most recently completed fiscal year budget to a maximum of $80,000. Large budget organization applicants should demonstrate at least 20% of the requested DCA funds that would go toward artist fees, salaries, or similar payments. Large budget applicants should plan to provide detailed justification for projects in which more than 50% of the grant request would fund administrative staff or costs. Opportunities in this category are cycled by artistic disciplines, so new large budget organization applicants must contact the grant director before applying. Mid-size organization, operating, or project support. This is for mid-sized nonprofit arts organizations with an operating budget greater than $75,000 in its most recently completed fiscal year, and they may request up to 10% of its last completed fiscal year budget to a maximum of $40,000. Small organization, operating, or project support. A small nonprofit or arts organization with an operating budget between $10,000 and $100,000 in its most recently completed fiscal year may request up to 20% of its last completed fiscal year budget to a maximum of $10,000. The $25,000 overlap between small and mid-sized is intended to provide additional support for small organizations transitioning to mid-sized organizations. An emerging arts organization may apply for project support, and this is a very small nonprofit arts organization with an operating budget of less than $20,000 in its most recently completed fiscal year, and which has not yet applied for a grant through the Department of Cultural Affairs. Emerging applicants may request between $1,500 and $3,000 for an artistic project. Emerging applicants are not required to complete a data arts profile, but must submit a financial summary signed by the board treasurer as the primary supplemental attachment, verifying 1 year of previous artistic activity, prior budget size, and recent expenses. DCA can support 2 to 3 emerging groups per year, and priority is given to applicants that are headquartered within and/or serving arts underserved council districts. Contact the DCA staff for further details. And lastly, we have outdoor public space festival parades. The primary applicant must be a nonprofit organization and have a minimum operating budget of $20,000 per year. The maximum request amount is 30% of the applicant's expenses from its most recently completed fiscal year up to a maximum of $20,000. Outdoor events situated in one site or area which take place over 1 day or weekend should be submitted in the DCA's Outdoor Festival Parades category. An art walk is best eligible in the festival parade category, whereas other outdoor serial events are best categorized under culture history, multidisciplinary arts, or traditional folk arts. So for further detailed information on the topics we've discussed here, please see our website. If you pick any tab, you'll see a drop-down menu with detailed information. The website address for program information is http://DCA-redesign.org/grants/. This page is a wealth of information before you begin your application, and it's highly recommended that you review the guidelines each year you apply. Now let's go over the timeline for your application. If you haven't already, step 1, you should register for a FluidReview account. My colleague Ben Espinosa is going to drill down into the FluidReview application, and he'll show you also how to register for an account if you haven't already gotten one. Step 2, fill out and submit the online FluidReview application for the Cultural Grants Program. And please note, you have until August 30th to submit your application, and we welcome any questions regarding your application or any problems you're having as you apply. Please know you can always reach out to us for answers to your questions. Step 3, once you've completed your application, you need to print out a copy of it and of the certification statement and have that signed by a non-compensated board member. You're going to mail those items to us no later than September 4th, and you're free to drop them off by September 6th. Step 4, notifications will arrive. So projects awarded during this period have a timeline of beginning their projects July 1st of 2020 and must complete projects by June 30th of 2021. So now that you have a timeline, I'd like to hand over this presentation to my colleague, Ben Espinosa.
Brenda, thank you so much. Thank you for that detailed information. Before shifting into the application process, that'd be a good opportunity to take a look at any questions that folks might have on general program eligibility, project expectations. At the moment, we're not seeing any questions, so we'll take that as a good sign that Brenda and I are giving the desired information. And so, but that we still want to invite you to put down your questions for us using GoToWebinar's chat and question and answer tool. We'll continue to keep track of them as they come in, and we'll pause again later to address them. Okay, so you've learned about our program, you learned about what kind of projects we fund, you've learned about what type of organizations we fund, you learned about our 2-year grant cycle system. You're ready to apply. So a good place to go first is the DCA website, and you can get there by going to culturala.org. At the bottom of this page, towards the bottom, is a button called Grants and Calls. You can click on that. You'll see information for the Cultural Grant Program right here. You can click on that as well. And here's a nice overview of the program we just learned about. You will have read this already. You will have studied the eligibility. You would have done a very close study of the guidelines. You will have already participated in an awesome webinar. And so you're ready to apply. And you can start that by clicking on this Apply Here button. When you click on Apply Here, it's going to take you to a site called FluidReview. FluidReview is the online grant platform that DCA uses for administering grant applications and their review. So it's important that you have this account because it's through this platform through which you will be submitting your application and receive notifications about your application status. So if you haven't already, as Brenda mentioned earlier, your very first step is to create a FluidReview account for your organization. And once you're on this page, FluidReview page, and you know you're on FluidReview, by the way, when you look at the URL up top, it'll show dca-la.fluidreview.com. When you're here and you need to create an account, you can click on the Sign Up button here, and that will take you through the process of creating an account. If you already have an account, or once you've created an account, you'll have an opportunity to log in. And so once you enter your email address and password, you'll have a chance to sign in. And when you sign in for the first time, it will take you to your organization's dashboard. One of the very first things you will do is to create a profile. When you create a profile, you're providing the general information about your organization. Extremely important, oops, let's not go there. Extremely important that this profile information is super accurate and matches the IRS determination letter that shows that you're a 501c3. So basic information that the profile will include is your organization's legal name. It's worth repeating that this name should match exactly than the way your name, your organization's name is listed in your 501c3 determination letter. Basic contact information, phone, email address, and website presence. If you have it handy, a business assistance virtual network ID and a business tax registration certificate number are two numbers that the City of Los Angeles uses to track its relationships with organizations and vendors. If you've worked with the City of LA in the past, very likely you already have a BAVN ID and a BTRC number. If you don't have those handy right now, it's okay to leave this blank, but certainly helpful for us if you have it. Please do provide it. Mailing address is your organization's physical, the address your organization uses to receive hard copy correspondence. This may be a PO box. The physical address is where your organization's main office is located. As a reminder, an eligibility requirement for our cultural grant program is that your organization be based within the county of Los Angeles. So ensure that your physical address you're providing in your profile is an address in LA County. Another flag that I'd like to call out here is that we understand that you're submitting an application for a project that's going to take place in the 2020-21 year, and you won't even hear back from us on the status of your application around the May-June timeframe of 2020. So it's possible the information you're providing here may change. And knowing that, it's important that you create an account that is accessible by various persons in your organization who will have the means to update it as needed. Okay, so once your profile is good to go, if you go back to your organization's dashboard, once you've entered your profile, this little button will show as green and complete, and then you can proceed to the next steps of submitting an application. Very first thing is to make sure that your application shows up as a pending application down here. If you've never applied for a grant before, this area will be blank, and you won't have any grants to work on. That can be resolved by clicking on the green View Grants button. It will show you the list of opportunities that you can apply for right now from DCA. There's only one at the moment, and that's a cultural grant program. Once you've checked that box and create submission, it's going to add a pending application under the Your Grants section in your dashboard. And you'll know you have a pending application because you'll be assigned a unique application ID, and that's a number that starts off with the letters GA. Once you have this in place, you can click on that, and it'll finally take you to a snapshot of your online application. So the online application consists of two main components. The first one is this organizational grant proposal, which is the meat and potatoes of your online grant application. That's what we're going to be spending most of our time on in this webinar. In addition to that proposal, there's a series of online attachments, supplementary materials that you're going to upload to supplement your online application. We'll get into those a little bit later after we talk about the proposal. But the proposal is the big part. What's helpful about this page is that it shows you all of the components that you need to submit online that comprise a complete application submission. And these little status icons indicate to you what you still need to do. Everything that you still need to do should show up as a gray little icon there. And when you complete it, it'll turn green. So let's jump into what you'll find in the organizational grant proposal. You can get into it by simply clicking into the button. The organizational grant proposal consists of 3 main pages, and you can navigate to it using these buttons up on top. Note, however, when you navigate to the various pages of the application, any unsaved data you've inputted may get lost. So it's important that as you enter information, that you click on the buttons in the very bottom here, that next page of form, which will save your data. But if you want to just take a quick tour of the questions that's going to be asked of you, you can navigate to the other pages by clicking on these buttons. Okay, so page 1 will ask you a series of general information about your organization and your proposed project. So let's jump right in. The first part's about your organization. You'll see that it conveniently auto-populates a number of these fields based on the information you provided in your profile, which is helpful. Another opportunity to double check that what shows up here is accurate and matches all your 501c3 IRS determination letter, as well as the way your name appears with the various city databases we talked about a second ago. That's the BAVN account, BTRC account, and so forth. Contact information, phone number, email. Please ignore this. This appears to be a bug with the online application. It tried to funnel in the URL that you had provided in your profile, but for some reason it didn't. It was not successful. Pardon me. But you can feel free to delete this and enter the correct URL if needed. Again, some various numbers here that the online application requests. We talked about the BAVN and the BTRC number. If you have those available, please do provide it. The Dun & Bradstreet Data Universal Numbering System, DUNS number, is a number used widely at the federal level. We ask of it here because it's helpful for us on our own reporting of the organizations we support. If you have it available, please do provide it, but not a required field for the purpose of submitting an application. Basic information about your organization out of the way. We can start drilling into some of those data points that drill into the type of organization you are. So again, this refers to the section that pardon me, that Brenda discussed earlier. You need to take a look at your organization's most recently completed fiscal year to determine your budget size. And you can have a nice refresher on what those guidelines are by clicking on this link here. It'll take you to the page on the DCA website that outlines how we define these various budget categories. Once you made your selection, you can just simply click the radio button. The next question asks about the predominant artistic discipline involved in your proposed project. So think about the project you are proposing to us and think about the art form that most applies to it. Be careful here because it's quite possible you could be, let's say, a visual arts institution, a museum, for example, but you're proposing a series of music concerts taking place on your campus. While you might be a visual arts organization, you're actually proposing a project that's going to be in the music category. Okay, so think about the discipline associated with the project you're proposing to us. That's going to be the box you select here. You'll also notice that these artistic disciplines, some of them have an asterisk. So those asterisks correspond to the 2-year funding cycle that Brenda described earlier. For example, you'll see business ed and advocacy with an asterisk, culture history with an asterisk, etc. These are the artistic disciplines that would be on cycle in this odd year application deadline process. If I'm submitting a design visual arts project, it happens to be approved for funding. It's approved for funding in the 2020-21 year. And I'll also have an opportunity to renew my panel score for the 21-22 year. Alternatively, if I'm a dance company and I'm proposing a series of free and low-cost dance concerts, I'm going to select the dance category. There's no asterisks here because it's not an on-cycle submission. Rather, it's an off-cycle submission, totally eligible. But just know that your dance proposal will be reviewed by a panel of mixed arts experts. There might be a dance person in there. There'll be a visual arts person in there. There'll be a theater person in there. So they're going to review your proposal. If approved for funding, you'll be approved for funding in the 2020-21 year, but you're going to be asked and expected to submit an application again this time next year to get on cycle into the dance or other performing arts artistic disciplines. So make your selection there. Okay, so this is the first time you're going to be asked exactly how much you are requesting in grant funding. So a couple of things to think about once you enter a number here. Number one, remember this is a matching grant program. So when you're submitting, when you enter a number requesting $10,000, for example, our expectation is that you have a project in mind with a budget of at least $20,000. And in all likelihood, it probably will cost more than that. So remember that this number is your request, but we have the expectation that you're proposing a project wherein you are matching it at least 1-to-1. A second important consideration is to ensure that this number jives with our guidelines for a maximum grant amount request. So again, this is a good time to revisit that page I linked to earlier, which outlines are the guidelines for an allowable maximum grant request based on the size of your organization. So for example, if I am a small arts organization and my last year budget was $50,000, based on these guidelines, I'm allowed to request up to 20% of that, which is 10,000. So that's an allowable number. A final check for that, by the way, is to take a look at your Data Arts Funder report. We'll talk a little bit more about what Data Arts is in a little while. But based on your Data Arts Funder report, we want to look at your gross revenues last year, less in kind, and that's the number that you should be using to calculate what your maximum grant request is. In my example earlier, I said I was a $50,000 arts organization. Our expectation when we see that is that your Data Arts report will show us your most recently completed fiscal year showing gross revenues less in kind of $50,000. Okay, and that's where you can enter this field here. That's a data point and a check for you. All right, after you've entered your grant request, you can proceed to tell us about what kind of project you are proposing. Artistic, arts ed, business ed advocacy, etc. And again, the details for those are Brenda described earlier, but you can also find it back on our website. The next question asks you to indicate for us the two primary categories of impact your project is seeking to achieve. Whether or not it's convening like-minded artists to share knowledge and practice, is it more about artist talkbacks with the community dialogue? Is it more about lifelong learning? Is it about doing multi-week residencies in a public school that culminates in a publicly accessible performance? Is it about generating jobs for artists, the creative field, arts administrators? Or is it really emphasizing opportunities for the members of the public to go and experience the arts? Tell us the top two desired impacts of your proposed project. Okay, the next two questions are geographic in nature. The first one asks you to indicate which Los Angeles City Council district your organization is based in. If it's based in the city of Los Angeles, you'll have one of 15 council districts to pick from. If it's elsewhere in Los Angeles County, you would check this box and enter the name of the city and or neighborhood where your organization is based. If you need help on determining what council district your organization is based in, there's a link here to LA City's Neighborhood Info app, a helpful online tool where you can enter your address. Let's put in DCA's address, for example, and click Find. It'll give you a wealth of information, including which city council district your organization is based in. So that address, for example, corresponds with with council district number 14. So again, if your organization is based in LA City, you'll have one of 15 options. If it's elsewhere in LA County, you can check this box and enter that here. A reminder that an eligibility threshold requirement is that your organization be based within LA County. The second question asks that you indicate which city council districts your project is to take place. The requirement here for everybody is that your project is going to include programming to take place within the geographic boundaries of the city of Los Angeles. Again, you could use the neighborhood info tool to confirm the location of your proposed work. It's certainly worth repeating for us to highlight the council districts that we consider arts underserved and are therefore priority areas for us. As Brenda mentioned earlier, those two geographic regions in the city is the San Fernando Valley and South LA, and that corresponds with council districts 3, 6, 7, 12, and 8 and 9 in South LA. So keep that in mind. You would start off with a small advantage, perhaps big advantage, depending how competitive the field is, if you're proposing projects that take place in those aforementioned council districts. But don't go crazy and just check off those boxes just for the purpose of scoring well with this question. Remember that part of your submission will include host venue forms. So you need to really have an idea of where your project is likely to take place, because we're going to want to see at least one host venue form for every council district that you check off in this question. Start and end dates for your proposed work. Again, a reminder that this is you're proposing activity to take place in the 2020-2021 year, which is July 1, 2020 and June 30, 2021. So make sure your proposed project takes place within that window. Public impact of proposed services asks you to think about the various people that will be involved and served in your proposed work. Project participants are the creative leaders, administrative leaders involved in carrying out the project. Audience members are the folks who come and participate in your work. So enter those numbers here. These numbers will be important later as we will use it to calculate a cost per head ratio for your proposed project. The next question asks about special constituencies. We're interested in learning about your organization's support for a variety of targeted populations in the city. So we're going to ask you to select up to 5 target groups that your organization actively works to serve, and be thoughtful here. Focus on the groups that your organization proactively provides services for. It's important because the various groups you select here, our expectation is you're gonna tell us more about your organization's outreach and support for those folks in the narrative portion that will come later in this proposal. And that's the first page. So that's the general information we're asking about your organization and project. I don't think it's gonna let me go to the next page. What looks like it did. No, it did not. So this is a good time to call out. When you click on this green button in the bottom of the page, this is actually what's going to save the data you've entered. However, it won't let you advance unless you've entered all required data. So that's a good way to save your information. Make sure you've entered everything in. But for our purposes, we want to jump around so we can showcase the various questions we're expecting. So that's why we're going to use these buttons up on top. Okay, so page 2 of the organization grant proposal is going to be where you jump into the narrative responses that comprise your proposal. So the first ones are, before going on, this is a good time to call out that every one of these questions has a predefined character limitation. Note that these character limitations exclude spaces, so keep that in mind. And these limits are, consider them very valuable, so be very thoughtful about every individual word and letter you put in these responses, because they're limited. So, and we have to limit it at these numbers. So keep that in mind. Another reason why it's helpful, a good idea, to prepare your responses in advance in something like Microsoft Word, so you can take advantage of the character counting tools, spell check, other various copy editing tools in the word processor, and before copy pasting those responses here. In this portion of the proposal, you'll also see a series of questions with these little starbursts. Those starbursts denote questions that are also used by a variety of other local, state, and private funders around the arts. So if you've applied for grants with LA County, for example, or with the state, you might see some of these questions before. So that could be helpful for you as you prepare your proposal. You may have some of this content prepared at the ready. So the first narrative question is about the mission and purpose of your organization. Be very clear here and just simply provide the mission statement for your organization and any supplementary context you want to provide around that. Worth highlighting that an eligibility requirement for our program is that your mission includes and highlights arts and culture as a primary purpose of your organization. So make sure that your mission statement is clear about that when you enter it. Second narrative response gives you an opportunity to tell us about the history of your organization and general information about your programming. An emphasis here is to focus on recent history and recent programming. Knowing full well that we're lucky to work with organizations who have storied multi-year histories working in the city of LA. Certainly call out some of the main milestones of your organizations and the direction you're taking, but invest this 3,000 character limit on the most recent historical achievements, programming milestones, so that our panel is aware of what has most recently taken place. Planning and leadership is where you get to tell us about where your organization wants to be artistically, operationally, financially within the next 2 years. We want to see short-term goals, very concrete ideas about where you envision your organization and programming to be in the near future. This is not a place to draw a wish list, to list out hopes and aspirations, but rather be very clear and direct about where you see your organization going and the action steps you're going to be taking. You want to convince the panel that your organization has momentum and is moving forward and growing. Community and core audience is where you get to tell us about the people you serve. Why is your programming, why is your organization important and relevant to the various organizations that your programming is serving? This is an opportunity where you get to refer back to those special constituencies that you checked off in the first page. We want to understand the folks you serve in terms of geography, age, cultural, economic factors, and we want to know how you are developing your programs to address their needs and to maintain relevance. Artistic policy is where you get to tell us about how artistic decisions are made at your organization. Do they reside within a singular person? Is there a committee involved? Is there an opportunity for public input? You want to give our panel a very clear understanding about how your organization is run artistically, and importantly, how your artists are compensated. So that's where you get to describe that. Okay, with those questions out of the way, now you get to tell us about the wonderful project that you are proposing to us. So, project description. This is where you get to put on your journalistic hat and tell us about the when, what, where, and why of the work you are proposing. A couple of notes here. This is an opportunity to show off your detailed expository fact-based writing skills. Not a good time to turn on the flowery marketing abilities of your writing. This is where you really want to draw a very clear, detailed, fact-based picture about where your project's going to take place, why it's happening, who are the people involved, and why it's consistent with your mission, as well as DCA's mission and our goals for this particular grant program. As you're fleshing out the details of your project, remember that DCA supports projects that have taken place already, at least 1 year, ideally a little bit more than that, because we want to understand that the project you're proposing works, it's successful, and you're reaching out to us for a little support to make it bigger, faster, stronger. So, so keep that in mind as you're preparing your project details. I'll call a couple more details before addressing some questions I understand have been coming in regarding projects. Another important consideration is that the details you provide here in the project narrative should draw a picture of a scalable project. For example, you might be proposing an outdoor festival that features 10 key acts, or you might be proposing a 5-week residency to take place at 5, 7, 8 schools. It's important that the project is clearly scalable, because what often happens with government-funded projects is that you may not get everything that you are asking for if approved for funding. So the panelists would like to be reassured that if approved for less funding, the project can still take place, however, at a smaller scale. Okay, so before going further, let's address a couple of questions that have arrived.
So I've tried to answer some of these questions. So for a arts education project that's a literary arts program and students are in playwriting and culminates in a performance, would be considered a performing arts application, yes?
Is that if
Arts education with a performing arts emphasis.
right? So this sounds like an arts education project with a performing arts emphasis.
Yes.
Brenna's absolutely right. So that would certainly be an eligible project. It would be considered an off-cycle project. So your proposal would of course be supplemented by a prescribed curriculum with a clear learning arc, learning objectives that's aligned with the school's learning goals, VAPA standards, etc., and outline one or multiple publicly accessible culminating performance that happens outside of the school day, after school, in the evenings, or in the weekends. That will be reviewed by a panel of experts who aren't necessarily focused on the performing arts. So if approved for funding, the organization would be asked to submit an application again this time next year to get on track for a 2-year cycle.
We have a similar question for an organization with an arts education project where students can join in at any week and the curriculum is repeated each session. How should they categorize that?
So it's a one session curriculum
8 weeks.
that is repeated eight times after. That's a good question. That kind of sits in the line between an artistic project and an arts education project. Could we ask that you reach out to us separately after the webinar? We'd like to look into that a little bit further. It's a good question. Okay, so those are the questions we've had at the moment. Let's go ahead and proceed with our online application on FluidReview. So yes, detailed fact-based expository writing under project description. Make sure that the project you're describing answers all the questions of the who, what, when, and where, and importantly, why, and ensure that it's scalable, showing us that this is a project that took place in the past, and DCA funding is going to make it bigger, faster, and stronger. Moving on to the next question. This is a question where you get to tell us about your desired impact and metrics that we can expect if this project were to be funded. So this is why it's important that we are proposing projects that have already taken place, because you will have ideally you will have some sort of baseline around which to work by telling in terms of you're telling a story around metrics. You want to give us numbers around who attended, how well it was attended, what they achieved, what they benefit, what they got out of your project, and what you think DCA funding could do with respect to those numbers. You want to also use this question to talk about the desired impact you would have on the special constituencies that you checked off on the first page as well. So this is where you get to show off a lot of the data you've collected in the past and describe how those numbers can be improved and made better with the help of DCA support. Also, this is the section where you get to tell us about the cost per head ratio of your proposed work. If you recall on the prior page, you included 2 key numbers: number of folks involved in implementing the project, the creative leaders, the artists, the arts administrators, as well as the participants and audience members. When you take the total cost of your project and divide it by those people, you arrive at a cost per head ratio. Helpful to know that across DCA's grant portfolio, that cost per head ratio hovers somewhere around $20 per head. So when you're proposing a project, keep that figure in mind. While we certainly understand that if you're doing a 10-week intensive where you convene 20 like-minded artists to engage in shared knowledge and dialogue, that might cost a little bit more than producing and presenting one dance concert for an audience of 500. So the cost per head ratio in that former project might certainly well be over $40 a head, whereas the one-time concert can be significantly less. Use this section to justify especially high cost per head ratios, because we certainly expect to see that in proposed projects. We want to understand how you explain it and justify it, that greater investment per person. Moving on. The next section, you tell us about the various artists and administrators and key staff involved in your work. So this is where you tell us about the name, titles, and short bios about the creative leaders in your project, the administrative and operational key staff who are going to make sure this project runs well and is successful, as well as the various artists who are running the workshops, the teaching artists who are going into the schools to carry out a multi-week residency. If you're doing a festival, tell us about the various bands and other acts that you're going to have showcased in your project. We understand that that your project is for something that is hopefully going to take place more than a year away. So try your best to certainly list out the folks who you think will be key and involved in the project. Absent the ability to do that, you can add a quick note in one of these fields to show, like, see attached. Like, see attached for last year's roster of artists, acts. This is why, again, it's important that the project you're proposing has a track record and history of success, because this way you can use one of the valuable supplementary attachments you can upload as part of your application to show us the roster of artists and musical acts or other creative folks involved in your project in the most recent year. The goal here is to show the panel that you have great talent involved in the past and will likely have them involved again in the future should the project be funded. So please list out those artists. You'll have an opportunity on the FluidReview account, FluidReview application, to share bios for up to 10 individuals. In the rare instance where there are more than 10 key artists and/or project staff involved in your work, reach out to us separately and we'll find a way to get you to share that information with us. After providing your artists and key staff information, we're ready to proceed to the third page of the online proposal. Again, I'm going to jump to it right here. And the third page is where you get to tell us about numbers. We get to talk about the project budget and project revenue. So the first thing we'll talk about is the proposal income. We want to understand the various income sources you are anticipating to make this project happen. A quick call out to remind you that the grant request you are submitting this application for belongs under contributed income under line, where is it? There you go. Yeah, line 21, government city. This is where you get to make sure that your grant request is included, okay? Other types of income, we tried to provide a very robust list here to capture many of the typical sources of income, so make use of it. Your ticket revenue, other admissions or like participant fees, tuition, touring, concessions and sales. Utilize these fields where applicable. Also important to remember to utilize the budget notes field. It's not a required field, but your goal when presenting a budget to our panel is to make sure that all their anticipated questions and uncertainties are answered. So if you're entering, $10,000 here ticket sales, it's helpful for the panel to understand whether or not that is going to be, whether or not that's going to be, how that's calculated is what I'm saying. so make sure you enter there, 400 tickets at $10 to arrive at, $4,000 in ticket sales, or if it's 200 tickets at $20 each to arrive at, at $4,000 in ticket sales. Two very different scenarios. A reminder that the projects that DCA funds needs to involve free and low cost activities. So just a quick note on ticket sales. We define free or low cost, or a low cost activity, to kind of fall in line with the price of a commercial movie ticket. So if you're asking for per person tickets that are around $15 a person, I think you're in the ballpark of what we define as free and low cost. Anything higher than that, we start to leave that territory. Other things to call out here in the income portion. This is an opportunity where you get to outline any state monies that you're receiving as well, county arts commission grants that you're anticipating for your project, or also in the city field, the city government line. Certainly your grant request to DCA, it's important for us to know that's captured here, but let's say you might also be receiving some support from your local city council member. This is where you would add that as well, further highlighting the importance of these budget notes. If you're requesting a $4,000 grant from DCA and maybe getting $1,000 from your council member, it's important for us to understand that $4,000 is a DCA grant plus $1,000 council member support. So all this to say, use the budget note fields liberally. More data is certainly not harmful here. You want to draw a very clear picture of your income sources for your project. And by the way, that's something I should have highlighted earlier. I said project. This is a project-based budget, okay? Avoid the temptation to outline your organization's full-on income sources for the year. Focus on the project that you're proposing. If your project is to produce and present 2 free or low-cost arts exhibitions, we need focus on the income sources and cost of just those 2 exhibitions only. It's a project budget. DCA is a project funder, not a program funder. Make sure your numbers reflect that. After income, this number will automatically add up all of your various fields here. So know that that's a tool available to you. Proposal expenses is where you outline the cost of your project. So we want to understand the costs of the artists and performers, the personnel, the payroll personnel who are administering the project, fringe benefits, various operating expenses like equipment rental, space rental, fundraising, insurance. Please enter all of those fields. Again, we tried to pre-populate this with budget lines that we think capture most of the projects we fund. Make use of them and make use of the budget note fields as well. When it comes to these project expenses, both operating and artistic salaries, the budget field is also a good spot to communicate to us where you anticipate using DCA funds. As Brenda mentioned earlier, we have a few priorities of where we like to see DCA funding go. We love to see our funds go and support artists and their salaries, creative fees, the arts administrators who are integral in making a project happen. We like to ensure that the projects that you carry out have maximum enrollment and capacity, and to that end, we love to see DCA funds go toward marketing, promotional expenses to ensure that happens. And then after that, we like to see it support the indirect costs of making a project work. So keep that in mind as you're filling out your project budget here. Use the budget notes to clarify how certain budget lines are calculated and to show the panel where you anticipate allocating DCA funds. And again, the expenses line will automatically calculate based on the numbers you've entered there. Important as you're doing this, that your expenses match your income. We are interested in supporting projects that do not have a deficit or that do not have a surplus. Because if it's a deficit, it raises flags about the administrative capability of carrying out a project. If there's a surplus, we're wondering why you're not requesting a grant that is the grant amount less the surplus. And remember, these are all estimated numbers. So we understand this is a project that's happening in the future. We want you to utilize your experience because after all, you've carried out this project in the past. And so you have an idea of how much things cost. So we know that you're going into this already informed with that experience. So, but we understand these are estimates. Okay, so we talked about expenses and incomes. Our expectation is that expenses matches your income. And then after you enter your anticipated expenses, this cost per head ratio will also automatically calculate based on the numbers you've already entered. As I mentioned earlier, this typically hovers around $20 or less across DCA's grant portfolio. If it's higher than that, it's a good check for you to go back to the previous section of the narrative to provide a wonderful justification for why it might cost more than $20 per person. When you click next page of form, the online application is going to do a quick check for you to make sure your expenses matches your income. So you'll have yet another checkpoint there to ensure that the numbers you're providing make sense. After that, you've completed the organizational grant proposal portion of your application, and then it'll take you back to your online submission page, and this gray incomplete button will turn green. That's your green light to move on to the next components of your application. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the next section of the application are a variety of file attachments and uploads that you are including as part of your online submission. The first one is an important one for us. It's your Data Arts Funder Report. So Data Arts is a Data Arts is a online platform that is housed and administered by Southern Methodist University. It's a place where a variety of arts organizations across the country go in and share valuable data about their programming and organization and metrics about their impact. It's useful because it helps standardize that data across the country, and it's wonderful for folks like DCA who fund projects around the arts. So because it gives us easy access and access to standardized data around an organization's operations and programming. So to get to Data Arts, there's a link here to culturaldata.org. And so when you go to culturaldata.org, it'll take you to their main page here. Make sure you're on the page. And that's the URL. Again, that's culturaldata.org. As I mentioned earlier, it's housed at SMU, and it's used across the country and by a variety of public and private funders. Our expectation is when you're preparing your application, you've already gone into your account to enter the various arts data and metrics for your organization's most recent fiscal year, and ideally most recent 2 fiscal years. This is a good time to highlight that for 95% of our applicants, Data Arts is absolutely required expectation of an application. The only exception to the Data Arts requirement is for our emerging arts organizations. Our up-and-coming, very small arts organizations need not have a Data Arts profile to submit an application. Instead, in lieu of a Data Arts profile, we are asking emerging arts organizations to submit as part of their application a financial snapshot, financial statements signed by your board treasurer to give the panel an accurate or helpful depiction of your organization's finances, operations, and programming. But again, for the vast majority of our applicants, Data Arts is a requirement. So after going to the Data Arts webpage, you're going to click on Login. You're going to enter your login credentials, email and password. After entering that, it'll take you to your organization's dashboard. So again, our expectations, what you're seeing here is the City of LA's DCA's Cultural Data Arts page. After you've entered all your most recent metrics and data, you are then ready to find DCA's unique funder report that you're going to share as part of your application. And you can get to that by clicking on the Funder Reports and Grants link up on top of the menu bar. When you click on that, it'll take you to a listing of various funders across the country who utilize your data, who utilize your arts data to produce a report. Easiest way to find the one for DCA is to use that search box and enter in a search query, let's say cultural affairs, and then clicking on the find button. When you do that, the web page will filter out some matches here, and you can see that City of LA shows up as the second item. So after seeing that, you can click on the View button to start to generate the report for your organization, tailor-made for us. If you've never generated a report before, you would want to click on that Generate Report button. But if you've already created it, you can simply click on the View Report button, which will prompt the cultural data page to produce this PDF report. Before it does that, it's going to ask you, it'll confirm for you which fiscal years it's tapping into the producer report. So as Brenda mentioned, our expectation is that you will have at least 2 years of grant reporting, recent years of reporting to share with us. So in our example here, we have the 18 and 17 fiscal years to share. Click on the green link, and then your Data Arts Funder report will be generated. It'll take you to this page. And you know you've arrived at the correct data report because you'll find DCA's logo in the upper right-hand corner of the produce report. Once you've confirmed that, you can click on the orange PDF button to save this report somewhere on your computer, in your desktop, for example, because it is this PDF report that you're going to be sharing with us in the FluidReview page. So go ahead and download that PDF, and you're gonna go into this Data Arts Funder report page, and you'll be asked to browse for it and upload it to your application. Once you've uploaded that file, this grade button will turn green, and it will be your green light to move on. As I mentioned earlier, the only exception to this Data Arts Funder report requirement is if you're a very small emerging arts organization. And in lieu of uploading that report, you can upload a financial snapshot, financial statements signed by your board treasurer as the required documentation. Available to everyone is this optional opportunity to share with us a financial snapshot. This is required for emerging arts organizations rather, which would have been uploaded in the previous section. But let's say you provided a Data Arts report and you filled that requirement. You also have the option to share with us a financial snapshot or a narrative response to explain any variances that may be depicted in your report. For example, if there's a huge budget drop of $100,000 between one year to the next, this will be an opportunity for you to tell us, oh, well, that prior year we had a huge capital campaign. It was hugely successful, but now we're back on track without a huge capital campaign, hence the big difference in our budget, organizational budget. This is a section where you'll get a chance to tell us that story, as well as provide any other clarifying notes about things that might be depicted on your Data Arts Funder report. As an FYI, we describe a variance that ought to have an explanation as a variance of 25% or greater. Okay, so keep that in mind as you're preparing, as you're considering whether or not to provide a financial snapshot to supplement your Data Arts report. After the Data Arts Funder report and the financial snapshot and variances, the IRS designation letter field is a very important one. Very simply, find where you have a copy of that PDF, where you have the PDF letter of your IRS 501c3 determination letter, and you're going to simply drag it here and upload it as part of your application. This is a third and final time to do that triple check to make sure that the way your organization's name appears in your 501c3 letter matches how your organization name shows up in your grant proposal. We want to see that match. The next section asks you to upload a list of your organization's board of directors. To help you with that, you can download a blank template of the form we expect you to upload. It's an Excel sheet where you get to tell us about the key board members, their name, city of residence, their area of work, professional affiliation, and years served. We've pre-populated with these 4 typical roles. Know that in the state of California, it's important that there's be at least 3, the president, secretary, and treasurer, who are involved in your organization. And they really ought to be non-compensated board members. It's important for the panel to understand that your organization has the can operate independently with the proper governance of mission and finances. So we don't want a key like creative role in the organization serving as president, vice president, and secretary, as well as administering the workshops that's going to take place, over X number of weeks at a school. So this ought to be a list of non-compensated board members who provide guidance for your organization. Once you fill this in and saved it somewhere in your computer, you'll have an opportunity to upload that for this question. I'm going to pause here, as I understand we have a question around the cost per head ratio. Brenda?
So we have a question, which is, my project will culminate with an online exhibition of work created by the students in the project. Should I include the projected number of unique visitors to the online exhibition when calculating the cost per head?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is yes. Yep. We understand that a live performance versus a mural off the side of the highway will have drastically different cost per head ratios. And so an online exhibition has the benefit of reaching a far wider audience and is likely to have a lower cost per head ratio. So yes, please do include that in your calculation. All right, moving forward with the online application process. Host venue forms is the next section of supplementary uploads. If you recall, our expectation is that for every city council district that you checked off in the very first page of the application, you're going to have a corresponding host venue form, at least one host venue form. Here's a quick peek at what that looks like. So what this essentially shows the panel is that there's some kind of communication on your part and your proposed hosts for this project. Important to remember here, this is not a contract, this is not a promise, it's a soft agreement and documentation that shows there's budding conversation and partnership happening between your organization and where you expect to have your project take place. Geography matters to us, as you probably know. So host venue forms are very important. Is a very important ingredient in drawing up a picture of a project that is likely to take place at the locations that the organization is telling us it's going to take place. In the instances, let's say you are your own host venue, if you're like a theater and you have your own theater, you get the opportunity of completing both sides of this form. You fill out the first part where you talk about the venue and where it's located, and you get to sign off saying, yes, you're going to host your venue. Let's say you're doing an arts education project and you plan to work with a variety of schools in South LA. Summertime can be a very tough time to get a principal to show up and sign a document like this. Understandable. In these instances, it's helpful for us to understand your most recent year, where your projects did take place. So as one of your in lieu of a host venue form in that case, you might want to provide a list of the various schools that your organization was at in the most recent year, as a way of showing us that you are likely to go back at those schools or nearby. But remember that for every council district that you selected in this application, we expect to see at least one corresponding host venue form. So complete those, have them signed, scanned, and saved somewhere on your computer, and then you'll have an opportunity to upload those here. And I don't believe there's a limitation on how many you could add here, right? So yeah, so feel free to provide lots of host venue forms. Those are a good sign. Those are valuable for your grant application. Okay, moving on. We talked about host venue forms. Artistic work samples, very important section. You have an opportunity to do one of two things. You can share with the panel 3 online links, and those URLs can lead to videos, audio tracks, or web pages, or share 10 static images. You can do one or the other, not both. But let me just encourage you, where possible, to provide a video if you can do it. Remember that our panelists will be spending so many hours upon hours reading text on a page, looking at paper, This is an opportunity to dazzle our panel with a great video that showcases what the real world on the ground experience of your project looks like. So the ideal artistic work sample is a video from the last time you did this project, ideally last year. That's not hyper edited. It's just an on the ground representation of what the project looks like, what it feels, what it sounds like, what the experience is like. Panelists here want to understand what the project experience is like, so a video is the best way to do that. Know that generally our panelists don't spend more than 5 minutes when reviewing artistic work samples. So when uploading a video, or rather when providing a link to a video that's long in duration, you might want to call out. Let's go into the section here so it's clear. Let's pretend we're doing links because that's the ideal scenario. Links. You would provide a URL here, and you would, in your description, include a good time marker where you'd like the panelists to begin viewing. Also important that we don't want passwords or any other restrictions on these videos. Make sure that the URL you're including here is something that the panelists can simply click on and enjoy. Again, worth emphasizing, not hyper edited videos. Don't think marketing promotional materials with lots of jump cuts, cuts from like a visual presentation to an interview with a participant. Think like, if I was at this event, if I was at the exhibition, if I was at the concert, at the workshop, I pulled out my phone and I was recording the experience. That's what we want to see. Absent a link, you can also provide images. Let's go to images there, and you'll have an opportunity to provide up to 10 images. Know that panelists will review images in the order in which they're presented, so be thoughtful about the sequencing of the images that you are sharing. Helpful to provide a caption as well. But if it's an image, same thing with the other attachments we did earlier. Choose file, browse for the file on your computer, and you'll have an opportunity to upload it here. So that's artistic work samples. But yeah, find those videos, find the compelling videos from last year, use it to dazzle our panelists. After artistic work samples, this is where you get to upload up to 4, no exceptions, 4 supplemental items to tell the panel how wonderful your project is. If you're doing an arts education project or an operating project, one of those 4 is already prescribed for you. An arts education project must have as one of its 4 supplemental items a curriculum, lesson plan, prescribed curriculum that showcases what the learning arc is to look like. That should be included. If you're doing an operating project, this is where you're going to submit the strategic plan that offers a prescribed administrative step that's to take place to make your organization bigger, faster, stronger. And so those will, if you're doing one of these 2 types of projects, one of your 4 will be that file. For those other 3, these valuable 3 supplemental items, this is an opportunity for you to showcase an outside voice, emphasizing how wonderful your project is. This could be a letter of support. This could be a review in the local paper. It can be a testimonial from a participant who engaged in your work in the prior year. It's an opportunity for you to provide a different voice for the panel about around what your project is like and how wonderful it is. Please make use of it. Almost there, folks. We're in the home stretch. 2 more key items here. And the penultimate item is this complete estimated service metrics form. This is where you get to start putting on your marketing hat, finally, to tell us about the various numbers and metrics and impact your organization and your project will have if funded. We want to understand numbers around the demographics of the folks you're going to serve, their age. This is where you get to tell us about your plan for marketing your work to make sure that everyone that is maximum enrolled and that everyone has the opportunity to experience it. Tell us about your social media plan, printed materials, ad buys, and about the jobs that you're going to create as part of this work. So this is another opportunity for you to showcase the impact of your work. And finally, but certainly not least, is an opportunity for you to show us and share with us feedback on your experience of seeking, considering, and preparing an application for funding through the cultural grant program. So wonderful to hear praise and positive notes, but more importantly, any critique is certainly very welcome. Please just use this part of the application to share constructive feedback with us and to let us know how we might improve this process in future years. So after you've completed that portion, you save and exited, all of these grayed out buttons will be green, incomplete. This angry looking prerequisites not met button will not be there. And rather, this green button will be live and ready to be clickable. You would click that button, and that will complete your online submission to the cultural grant program. What would happen next after that is you'll receive an automatically generated email with instructions for how you can print out and send to us a hard copy of this online submission. As Brenda mentioned earlier, the online submission needs to take place. In other words, this green button must be pressed by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, August 30th. That's a holiday weekend, right, Brenda? That's a Labor Day weekend. So we hope you will not be up late Friday on August 30th, and that you will have clicked on this green button well before that, because we want you to enjoy your Labor Day weekend. But after you submit that, you'll get an email with instructions on how you can download this and print out a hard copy for us. Our expectation is that you get that in the mail so that it's postmarked by Wednesday, September 4. Or if you'd like to stop by and say hello, you can certainly drop that off as well as at DCA's downtown offices by Friday, September 6th, as that's the ultimate deadline during our office hours, please. So that concludes the online application process. It's a lot of information, so I hope you'll take the time to digest it, as well as revisit our online guidelines. Let me see here. I'm going to take us back to as Brenda mentioned earlier, the program guidelines live on dcaredesign.org/grants. You'll have an opportunity to read about all the various details that Brenda gave an overview for earlier, and we hope that will be helpful for you. Our goal is to get this webinar posted on the website as well. So our hope is that you'll have the opportunity to revisit this experience, to review the notes that we gave during a webinar. But in addition to that, know that both Brenda and myself are available to you to support you as you prepare an application for our August 30th deadline. Are there any questions that have come in since, Brenda?
There was a question about the year of the data arts report that need to be submitted. And I would just like to reiterate that we need your most recent financials, and that if your fiscal year for 2018 is complete, we would expect to see those numbers in your SMU data arts report. It's important for us to understand a current picture of the organization, and current financials is one metric we use to do that.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Brenda. Well, if there are no further questions, I think this is a good stopping point. I want to, on behalf of DCA and Brenda and myself, we thank you for taking the time to sit in front of your computer for an hour and a half to learn about our grant program. We hope you learned something about our program, and we hope you are better prepared in submitting a proposal. So we look forward to that. Feel free to reach out to us anytime, and thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye.